All right, so let's dive right into this family tree you've shared with us.
Okay.
Wow, it's going to be quite a journey.
Yeah.
Um, we're talking about a lineage that stretches back millennia,
Thousands of years.
starting with, get this, Adam,
Wow.
as in Adam and Eve.
Right out of the gate.
And all throughout, we've got these little skidoo annotations sprinkled in there,
Uh-huh.
like little clues in a genealogy mystery.
Little mysteries, yeah. It's certainly an ambitious tree, connecting to figures that we often find more in mythology than in any sort of historical record.
Right.
And it goes on from Adam and Eve, right, to Ben Elohim, literally son of God.
Wow, talk about starting with a bang.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, how accurate can a family tree that starts with Adam and Eve actually be?
Well, I mean, verifying any direct lineage to figures that far back
Right.
is a monumental task, if not impossible.
Yeah.
I think what we're probably seeing here is a blend of history and cultural myth. These early sections of these long family trees often reflect a society's origin story.
Right.
Their beliefs about where they came from as much as any sort of concrete genealogical connection.
So more about like establishing a grand narrative than about actual bloodlines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, claiming Hercules as your great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
It's aspirational, right? It
Yeah.
speaks to a connection to heroism and grandeur.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of grandeur, though, we see King of Say popping up a few times in here.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea what Say might refer to?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
That's where things get really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Say could potentially be referring to Scythia,
Okay.
which was this ancient region that spanned parts of modern-day Central Asia and Eastern Europe.
Wow.
So imagine your ancestors roaming these vast steppes, renowned for their equestrian skills and nomadic lifestyle.
Wow, nomadic horsemen.
Yeah,
That paints quite a picture.
it does.
Okay, so then we have these names that pop up, Phineas and Neolin.
Yeah.
And these sound like figures straight out of ancient legends.
Yeah, they really do, and they might be.
Yeah.
Without further context, it's really tough to determine their historical accuracy.
Sure.
But their inclusion here suggests that they held some significant importance within your family narrative,
Okay.
perhaps passed down through generations of storytelling.
Right, like these were the heroes of their time,
Yes.
their deeds woven into the fabric of your family's story.
Yeah.
So we move on, and then we hit a section that's marked legendary figures
Okay.
around the 10th, 12th centuries.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of Mac prefixes here.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
So Mac itself means son of
Okay.
in Gaelic languages.
Okay.
So it gives us already a little bit of a geographical clue.
So,
So these legendary figures like Sirnash, HK might be based on oral traditions
Okay.
or local heroes that were important to your family's cultural identity.
right.
Think about them like the Robin Hoods or King Arthurs of their time. These figures whose stories blur the line between fact and fiction.
Right, so they might not be like your direct ancestors in a verifiable sense,
Exactly.
but their stories are still a part of your family history.
They're woven into the fabric of your family history.
Okay.
And this consistent use of Mac really points towards a connection to Irish or Scottish Gaelic culture.
Okay.
So it's like a breadcrumb trail leading us towards a specific region and time period ripe for exploration.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
It's like piecing together a puzzle with history and myth and family lore.
a little bit of everything.
All these things coming together.
Yeah,
And speaking of history, as we move into the 12th century, things start to feel a bit more grounded.
yeah.
We see names that sound a bit more familiar, like we're stepping out of the realm of myth into like the documented past.
Yeah, like the fog is clearing a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's actually really common in genealogical research. As we get closer to the present, we often see this transition from, more mythological figures or loosely documented figures to people that have more concrete historical ties.
That makes sense.
So it's interesting to see that transition even in your own family tree.
Yeah.
From these legendary figures to something a little more historically grounded.
Absolutely. It's like watching the family tree transform right in front of us.
Well, I know, it's really something.
And we've got names like King D.S. McMahon now.
Yeah.
And generations that just seem so much more tangible.
Yeah, a little closer to home, right?
I do have to say, though, those unknown model entries are kind of heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you think about all those hidden stories within those branches.
It's a good point. It highlights this really common but often overlooked aspect of genealogy.
Yeah.
For centuries, women's lives were just rarely documented with the same detail as men's.
Right, of course.
Each unknown model, it represents a life lived, a mother's influence, that might be lost to history, but that plays such a key role in shaping the family tree.
Absolutely.
We miss that perspective a lot of the time.
Yeah. It is a good reminder that history is often told from a particular point of view,
Exactly.
and that we miss out when we only focus on one side of the story.
Totally. And I think the focus on male lineage here really suggests a patriarchal structure,
Okay.
which, was common for many societies throughout history.
Right.
Inheritance, family names, even social standing often flowed through the male line.
Wow. So we're not just like tracing a family line.
Right.
We're also like uncovering clues about the social structures of the past.
I love that point. Yeah, you can glean so much from this stuff.
It's fascinating. Speaking of uncovering clues, one name really stopped me in my tracks. Robert Bruce.
Oh, wow.
And not just once we see King Robert in the mix, too.
Yeah.
This can't be who I think it is, right?
You've got a good eye for detail. That is very likely Robert the Bruce,
No way.
King of Scotland,
Wow.
from 1274 to 1329.
Are you serious? So there's a chance my family tree includes a Scottish king.
It's possible.
That's incredible. What more can you tell me about him?
Well, I mean, he's considered one of the most iconic figures in Scottish history.
Wow.
Robert the Bruce is remembered for his courage, his strategic brilliance,
Yeah.
his unwavering dedication to Scottish freedom.
That's
To even be potentially connected to such a pivotal figure
I know.
adds a whole new dimension to your family story.
This is mind-blowing. Okay.
It's pretty cool.
So we've got these potential ties to ancient kings, legendary figures, and now a possible link to Scottish royalty.
Yeah.
As we get closer to the present day, though, I'm noticing this shift
Okay.
in the family tree, both in its structure and in the names themselves. Like we see way more surnames appearing now,
Yeah.
like James N. Lockie and Andrew Jean Arthur Lockie.
That's a great observation, and it really speaks to some broader social and economic changes that are happening around the 16th and 17th centuries.
Okay.
Surnames became more standardized. Societies got more complex. It helped to track lineages,
Right.
manage property ownership, navigate a rapidly changing world.
So it's like the family tree itself is mirroring these changes in society.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's getting more detailed and structured as we move closer to like modern time.
Exactly. And you also see these recurring surnames now,
Right.
like Lockie and Arthur.
Right.
They start to suggest that there are these specific family branches that are gaining prominence.
Okay.
Their stories are becoming more intertwined with the broader family narrative.
It's like we're zooming in on a specific thread within the larger tapestry.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how each generation adds its own chapter to the story.
I know, it's amazing.
And it seems like as we approach more recent centuries, those chapters become so much richer and more detailed.
Yeah, we're getting out of the realm of myth and legend
Yeah.
and more into, a well-documented era.
And it leads us to, well,
Yeah, to the present day, and
Yeah.
the individual who actually shared this incredible family tree with us, Carrie Kidd, and that's where the story, I think, takes its most compelling turn.
it's like we went from digging through ancient texts to reading a modern-day biography.
Right, and it kind of makes you wonder, right, like, how will our lives be seen hundreds of years from now?
Yeah. Are we the ancient legends to future generations?
Exactly, and what will they make of our, tweets and our Instagram posts?
Right. Exactly.
It's fascinating to think about.
It really is. So we've got Carrie Kidd, and she's not just a name on this family tree, right?
No, not at all.
She's a real person with, a career and experiences that we can really connect with.
Yeah, it's so interesting how this family tree goes from these, like, vague historical figures
Right.
to someone who you could probably find online right now.
Yeah, exactly. And her resume is pretty impressive.
Oh, absolutely.
She's a GIS specialist, heavily involved in community work,
Yeah.
and she's got this like passion for Appalachian culture.
It's really cool to see those details.
It's a far cry from, King of Say.
Right.
It really
Wow.
is.
It just goes to show that, even with these ancient roots,
Yeah.
there's still this real person here living a full and interesting life.
Yeah, it really brings it all together.
It does. It makes those ancient kings and those legendary figures
Yeah.
suddenly feel a lot more real and a lot more connected to the present day.
Yeah, it's not just history, it's her story.
Exactly.
And even her career choice, GIS, it's about like mapping and understanding place.
It's
Right?
right. It's all about understanding where we fit in.
It's almost like she's continuing this like ancient tradition,
Right.
of exploration and figuring out where we belong in the world,
I love that connection.
just with modern tools.
Exactly. It's like the same drive that sent those ancient explorers across the world
Right?
is still alive in her today.
That's an incredible thought.
It really is. It speaks to this deep-rooted human curiosity,
Yeah.
this desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
It really has.
We've uncovered whispers of ancient kings,
Mhm.
explored the stories of legendary figures,
It's been quite a ride.
and traced a lineage all the way to like a living, breathing person
To the present day,
who is living their best life.
living proof that history isn't just something in textbooks.
Yeah,
It's something we carry with us,
absolutely.
in our blood and in our bones.
And on that note, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of family history.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
It really has. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.